That was very, that was very nice. Thank you very much. I've never been whistle introduced. Thanks. All right, slides, please. Does that look correct? All righty, good. Hi, everyone. My name is Jan Lehnardt. I'm a JavaScript developer from Berlin, and I'd like to thank the JSConf Iceland organizers that they invited me to close their very fine conference. It is an honor. The title of this talk is The State of the JavaScript Community. When you look at the topics that were presented just here at this event, you will quickly see that there's not one JavaScript conference, but many, community. Not one JavaScript community, but many JavaScript communities. We might write code in the same language, but our interests are web, Internet of Things, virtual reality, and plenty of subgroups as well, front-end, back-end, robots, bicycles, and. Our community is really a set of communities, and that's a good thing. The more communities we have in JavaScript, the more interesting people we have joining. And these new people are finding new problems to solve in JavaScript, and then they will find even more solutions to these problems in JavaScript, and then other JavaScript communities can take these solutions and apply them to their field. For example, jQuery, a phenomenally successful project, has at its core a feature making the DOM, a vile beast of browser programming, more accessible to a lot more people, to the point where people were more jQuery developers than JavaScript developers. It was that successful, or still is. When Rick Waldron wanted to get people to use JavaScript to control robots, he created a library, or the library Johnny 5, and aside from a great name, he stole the idea from jQuery that making the complex world of hardware more accessible to more people would lead to success. And it worked. This cross-pollination of ideas happens all the time, and it's fantastic. I'm very happy the JavaScript community is so diverse in topics. As far as overused aphorisms go, software's eating the world is as good as any. Now in software, JavaScript is everywhere and used for everything, and most developers that do something else also do at least a little bit of JavaScript. By any measure, JavaScript is the biggest, most successful programming language of our time, or even all time. So when software's eating the world, and JavaScript is eating software, so JavaScript is eating the world. That's a good thesis here. A better world. We, as a set of JavaScript communities, have a significant impact on the world. We shape its future. This is why now, more than ever, it is important to look at our culture, because our culture informs who we are and where we are going, and who we are taking along for the ride. Today, the JavaScript community and the culture is me. Straight, white, male, upper middle class Westerner with all the privilege in the world. And that's great for me and everyone who looks like me. But most of the people on this planet do not look like me. And if we are building a future for everyone, we need to have representatives of everyone participate in our making of that future. They need to be part of our culture, our design, and business decisions. Building software is an act of representation. Just one chilling example. When Facebook changed its default privacy setting for group memberships to public, a queer person from an area that is traditionally not as open-minded got their membership in a queer choir revealed to their parents, putting that person at significant personal risk. If Facebook's product managers and designers or developers would include more queer people, this product design decision would have not gone through. Most software is designed and built without any understanding of the circumstances of the majority of the people that end up using that software, and the results are increasingly terrible. I just need to point at Twitter's rampant abuse problem and their cultural inability to deal with this. It's not that they can't solve this, they don't want to, and most of us are kind of okay with that. In his book, Creativity Inc., Ed Catmull, the founder of Pixar, reveals one of the cornerstones of Pixar's continued success. Success hides failure, and success makes complacent. In short, true long-term sustainability comes from introspecting one's failures and staying vigilant about one's work's downsides, especially in the face of massive success. There's no argument to be lost that JavaScript is successful, so let's introspect our culture and let's be vigilant about our work. Discussing this whole topic comprehensively would probably take a couple of days, so I'm just picking a few things so we can get this discussion started. One of the cornerstones of our community is open source. Most of the software we use daily is open source or built on open source, and most of our tooling as developers is also open source. And as someone who has deep roots in open source, this is fantastic. This is the kind of world I want to live in. Or do I? In the past few months, 3 major JavaScript projects announced that the one person that was left maintaining them is leaving and the project would be abandoned, more or less. What happens is this: somebody published something useful on GitHub and NPM, and a ton of people start using and relying on it. Eventually, the support burden, end-user questions, issue reports, pull requests, and so on, overwhelm the individual, and they get overworked or worse, burned out. We had a show of hands about burnout in the opening talk by Miles yesterday, and I know a fair number of you have experience with this. My hand certainly went up, and I hope we can avoid for the rest of you to ever have to deal with this. By the way, the 3 projects were Grunt, Bower, and Uglify that millions of people depended on. It is obvious that our culture doesn't include a way to make open source projects sustainable. And it puts our infrastructure at risk, and more importantly, it puts the people in our community at risk. There are many, many things that we can do to improve this. There are many, many problems that we need to be improving. But I was recently on a podcast called Request for Commits. That's a new thing that came out because I had blogged about this topic last winter. And I don't have time to go into all the things, to cover all the things, but if you're interested in that specific part, please come up to me later and we can talk about this. If there's one thing, I want to pick one thing that we can be doing to improve this, and if we can get this going, this would be really good. When reporting issues to package maintainers, be nice. I understand that it is very, very frustrating to spend hours or days to find out that a small mistake in a very deep down in your dependency tree causes you grief. But letting that frustration out on the package maintainer has terrible consequences. 1, your incentive, of course, is to get the issue fixed. The number one thing you can do to make sure somebody is absolutely not inclined to work for you for free is yelling at them and calling them names. I know most of you are clever enough to understand that and to understand this and mature enough to not behave that way. The second terrible consequence is that you're very likely not the only one doing this. Not you specifically, but you know what I mean. And even if one abusive issue might not cause any problems for a maintainer, which is already unlikely, getting one every week or one every day elevates the maintainer's personal frustration to a constant stream of so-called microaggressions. And these drain their emotional resources. Most people leave open source because of the abuse of their emotional labor. Women and other underrepresented groups doubly or triply so, because they don't only have to deal with this, but have their technical abilities questioned non-stop as well. Like I said before, there are a lot of things that we can be doing, but everyone here should start not being an asshole on GitHub, and also help out to create a culture of no tolerance for assholes in JavaScript. And when we do that, we will be significantly better positioned to make our community more sustainable. As Miles pointed out in his opening talk, for us humans, this is the natural thing to do. And as an added benefit, our culture will be perceived as more friendly and welcoming. So we have a bigger chance of attracting more new people and keeping them in the community to benefit from their experience that Jenna just showed us. I need a drink. Another angle of sustainability is the ability to pay people for their work, especially those who are not naturally privileged enough to work on open source otherwise. And of course, some open source projects are funded by corporations, but the majority is not. And at one point or another, this is going to be a problem. Many here will be familiar with the Heartbleed vulnerability that was discovered in OpenSSL a while back, and that revealed 2 things. First, everyone and their dog was relying on OpenSSL for mission-critical encryption work. Second, the code was basically maintained by one person in their spare time. What could possibly go wrong? This got addressed fairly quickly, but most open source projects are not as prolific, while still being the foundation of a lot of other software, open and closed, and they receive 0 funding. We have no culture of making sure open source projects are financially sustainable, and we even have people argue that money ruins open source, but that these people could be not more misguided. I want to give special thanks to Nadia Ekbal, who has been doing fantastic research on this topic and is now working at GitHub to help address this issue more broadly. There are links to her work at the end of my slides. Oh, I can have another drink. Intentional pause. The technology industry is not very diverse, and open source is even worse. It took me ages to come up with a rhyme for this. Only 20 to 25% of people in tech are women, and 1 to 5, maybe 10% of people in open source are women, trending downwards. And we don't even have numbers for the demographics of other underrepresented people in tech. But the numbers would be a lot worse. We have a lot of work to do. It's a quick interlude on the words of inclusion and diversity, just to clear up any misconceptions. Inclusion is everyone and their dog are happy to be part of your community, and they can safely engage like any other member and have fun doing so and get support when they need it. And diversity is when people with a lot of different backgrounds and experience are part of your community, and these experiences inform your community's activities and make them better, stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more successful as a result, basically repeating what Jenna just had on her slide. Thank you very much for the pre-work there. If you want to learn more about this, again, at the end of the slides, there are a bunch of videos by someone called Lehnardt, who's given a bunch of fantastic talks about this that will really inform you about this. Now, inclusivity must come before diversity, and diversity is a consequence of inclusivity. If you're trying to increase diversity without making things inclusive, you not only set yourself up for failure, but for new individuals they will have horrible experiences. So don't do that. So this is all a bit sobering, so let's look at some of the good things, like this kitten. I have this in my browser as Command 3. If I'm having a bad day or a bad moment, I will really, this helps. This is good. Let's do this for a bit. Also, I'd like Miles to do like a psychedelic version of this, please. Something I absolutely love about JavaScript is the sense of collaboration to move our collective understandings of solutions forward. I love the pace at which this happens. I like that our community gets a lot of attention by big commercial players without any one of them dominating, and I like how successful the whole bundle is. We even get competition right. Imagine Ember didn't have to compete with React. They would have never rewritten their rendering engine to be faster than React, and then React would never have let that slide and improved on their design to beat Ember again, and then Ember one-upped them again, and so on. And like the proliferation of useful ideas mentioned before, this also happens all the time, and we're all better off because of this. A clear downside of this, and I have to credit fellow speaker Mariko Kosaka for this idea, is that a lot of this happens in Pacific time, maybe in the overlap of US Eastern and Pacific time. Asia and the EU play clear second fiddle in this, and while the pace is thrilling, sometimes these things can't seem to wait for a planet rotation, so everybody gets a say. This limits our view for solving issues the best way, and we can do a lot better. We're doing really well in education, I think. Aside from all the great online resources everywhere, there are events like Node School and Node Together and a lot of others that bring more people into this community with a focus on learning and collaboration, and with a strong culture of trying to include and make a safe space for everyone. I love the nature of experimentation in our community. For example, the continuum between fully server-side rendered sites and fully front-end rendered apps, and everything in between, and the continuously shifting trade-offs and the resulting technical solutions, they all set us up for a better future. One of these experiments is very close to my heart. It's the small modules one. I fully believe in the small modules philosophy and semantic versioning and NPM and all of that. Heck, I even help run Greenkeeper with the goal of making all this better for the whole NPM community. So we don't have the full picture yet, but the Substackian extreme of everyone combining their small modules from first principle has its limits, as has the not invented here laden, no dependencies, I write my own monolith way of programming. And we're continuously learning new things and invent new tools that radically change the way our habits in one way or another, and it's fascinating to follow. I really like what we're doing, and sometimes it takes a little longer to figure something out, but eventually we'll get there, and I think it's really cool. While there are many communities in JavaScript, the biggest one is clearly the web. And that's my origin story too. I'm a child of the web. I believe it is one of the wonders of the world and worth preserving. One of the most fascinating things about the web is that it was designed with a focus on the individual user. One key component, the browser, is an agent for the user. It works on behalf of the user. Given that the web is so commercially significant, this design is revolutionary to this day. when the web was invented, everybody's data lived on their computers, and browsers made sure that websites couldn't steal that data. Now everybody's data lives in the cloud, and browsers are ill-equipped to deal with this new reality of so-called corporate surveillance. This is something native mobile, especially iOS, has an edge on the web, and there's a few more things where the web is lagging behind. However, a lot of that is getting addressed, and I'm very happy to see the progressive web app movement embracing the mobile web as a first-class citizen. I'm particularly excited about this because about 3 years ago, in preparation for a workshop that we did at MozFest London, I coined the term offline first, which is now an industry standard term, and the thinking behind progressive web apps fully embraced the offline first ideas. It's really cool. Around that time, 3 years ago, we had built the first version of Hoodie, an offline first backend for your front-end web apps. And while service workers and the like weren't around yet, we were and still are building fully offline capable web applications, assets, data, everything. And with Hoodie, we made that accessible to a lot more people, taking a book out of the jQuery and Johnny 5 playbook, where we were a little bit early though, because now I believe all that fun stuff with having data offline comes after you do service workers. But now that we had 3 times to mature a system, 3 years to mature a system, I think now is the time for everyone of you to first learn service work and then get into Hoodie. So that's really cool. What I like most about progressive web apps, though, is that they're designed around a culture of empathy. Hi, Miles. By empathizing with users around the world that may not have a gigabit fiber on their phone 24/7, we are now building new web standards that will inform our development culture to build on the web with more people in mind. This is a very important shift in our culture, and couldn't be more happy to see it. Standards. My notes say wait for laughter, so I'm waiting. Four spaces. Thanks again to Mariko for bringing this up. The old saying goes, standards are great, there are so many to choose from. Standardization is what makes JavaScript the language strong. No single vendor can dictate what the language is going to be, and that's very, very powerful. The same is true for the surrounding technologies on the web. But standards processes are also not very transparent. First, they are hidden behind a bunch of acronyms that help nobody really understand what is going on. W, 3, C, WH, AT, WG, ECMA. And that's just as inaccessible as these acronyms are, so are the organizations behind them as well as their processes. You can contribute to the HTML standard on GitHub today. Did you know that? Probably not. Do you feel empowered to do so right now? I don't know about you, but definitely not me. Do you know how to get a seat on the TC39, the acronym committee that's inside the ECMA acronym that defines the JavaScript language standard? I bet not. And by the way, I know it's ECMA. However, can you guess how diverse and inclusive these standards groups are? Probably not very. Some of them are realizing this and trying to change it. Some don't. And specifically, Node Core, the team that is responsible for building the runtime that runs all our JavaScripts, is openly reluctant to become more inclusive, despite numerous people spending significant amounts of time trying to address the issue. Because we have no culture of demanding diversity in our leadership group, and Node Core is a leadership group, Node Core gets away with this. We need to do better. A lot of technology happens in and around San Francisco. The melting potness and the abundance of capital allows the most outlandish ideas, most outlandish things to be tried out on the off chance that they are useful later. Because things are moving fast in technology, people are moving fast in technology. From a European perspective, the US employment laws facilitate this, and changing jobs every 6 to 12 months is normal. A 2-year tenure at a startup is rare, if not frowned upon. As a result, things are really built with longevity in mind. When Twitter open sourced Bootstrap and it got really popular, I feared that as soon as the developers, the Twitter employees leave, the project would be toast. Luckily, that has not happened, because the Bootstrap developers left Twitter to go indie and focus on Bootstrap, but that's not the common story. So as a result, the rest of the world has to deal with the half-baked and short-sighted swath of projects coming out of Silicon Valley because our culture dictates that no true software can develop anywhere else. And don't get me started on a region that has witnessed a 40-year stretch of hypergrowth and that has produced more millionaires and billionaires than anyone cares to count, and still has one of the most rampant cases of homelessness anywhere on this planet and can't be bothered to do anything about it other than creating a second layer of reality for just tech workers. What is the point of innovation if you're not building a better society? Most software is designed and built without any understanding of the circumstances of the majority of the people that end up using that software, and the results are increasingly terrible. Miles brought up allyship in his opening talk, and as a whole, we are lacking a culture of allyship. We are not very good at this, and I know I've personally failed at this and probably continue to do so. I know one instance of a known harasser in our community not being called out for their behavior, despite enough people knowing about it. I've personally got a hint of what was going on a while back, but I neglected to follow up. That was a mistake on my part, because I kept hearing in confidence that the harasser has been making their rounds through the community. This particular instance is now improving, but all of this happens behind the scenes because we have no culture that knows how to deal with this. And there are so many more cases that are not transparent to this community, or if they are tolerated. The sad thing is, it probably happened at this event as well. It's just the odds. It's not likely that this hasn't happened here. So, I'm not here to tell you what to think is right or wrong. I just want you to think for yourself about our culture and what it enables, and if you're okay with that. Are you okay with the fact that most salaries in our industry come from intrusive advertising that's beyond creepy and has sometimes life-threatening consequences for individuals or give governments and corporations increasing amounts of power about our lives? Are you okay with that we're actively excluding the majority of humanity from decision-making in technology and especially JavaScript? Are you okay with the fact that our industry is built on systemic oppression of anyone who's not a white man? Are you okay with the fact that rampant misogyny and abuse goes relatively unchecked in our industry and Jake Applebaum is just the proverbial tip of the iceberg? Are you okay with the fact that women get systematically paid less than men for the same job? Are you okay with the fact that women of color get paid even less for the same job? Are you okay with the fact that people with an African-American sounding name are 50% less likely to get a job interview? Are you okay with the fact that most startups are founded and funded and thus controlled by a demographic that just does not have the perspective to wield that power responsibly and who builds solutions for people like themselves rather than the 98% rest of the world? Are you okay with the fact that we are building our industry on a foundation of volunteer and emotional labor and burnout? Most of these problems are not just problems in the JavaScript community, but are problems of the tech industry or society at large. So why should we care to fix them? Number one, because it affects us. We have leadership teams that are not equipped to make wide-reaching decisions, and we and our projects are worse off for it. Our first motivation could be that we make our own lives better. Number two, keeping our own house clean before asking others to keep theirs is kind of only logical. Three, it makes us more sustainable and sets us up for long-term success. These are fine reasons, but more importantly, our culture increasingly defines the world. If we get it right, it will spread like our culture is already spreading. I believe it is imperative to leave the world behind better than we found it, and as such, it is our moral duty to make sure our culture is one that generations to come can build upon and be proud of. I don't want to be remembered to be the generation that is missing out on effecting much-needed change as being complacent in the face of overwhelming evidence that despite our successes, we have a lot of work ahead of us. I want the closing speaker of JSConf Iceland 2066 remember us and say, that generation, they really pulled their weight and set us up for long-term success with a solid foundation to build a community on and to build software for everyone on this planet, with everyone on this planet. That is why I care, and I hope that is why you care too. Thank you very much.